Well, hello and welcome from the studios here at TBNK. Normally, I'm up here doing a podcast. I have one of my partners like Brian Blair with me, and we're talking sports this time of year. And don't worry, we will be back and talking sports real soon from this very studio. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. As everybody knows in the sports world, it's March Madness time. But another passion of mine happens to be movies, and I've always loved them ever since I was a kid, and I have followed movies throughout the course of the year, and I see a lot of movies throughout the course of the year as well, and I have made a point this year to see all of the films nominated for Academy Awards, and then I'm going to let you know what I think the Academy will pick in the 5 major categories and what I would pick in those 5 major categories. But what we're going to start off with, now that they've increased the number of movies nominated for Best Picture, we're going to give brief reviews of all those movies, let you know what's good, maybe what isn't, maybe all of them are good, maybe it's a tougher time. One note before we get started that I think it's important to share. At some point in the last 5 to 10 years, Hollywood, which always leaned a little bit liberal, decided they were going to include that within the Academy Awards. And no, I'm not talking about the many times actors will get up and talk about their favorite run-of-the-mill liberal quest that they're doing that week, whether it be the environment or whatever it is. The politics aside, it kind of turned into let's figure out what's the best movie with diversity in it. And that was an actual thing that was discussed. There were certain quote-unquote diversity requirements. And it affected some movies that won Best Picture in the last few years. There was a time when I could honestly predict the top 5 categories. I got to where I knew how they thought and could tell you what movies were popular. I could hear the buzz about certain films and let you know. That's been a lot more difficult lately. Anymore, I'm hardly ever perfect in the top 5, but I do have some ideas, and I do have an inkling and a suspicion about some, and we'll see if I'm right. But keep in mind, it no longer becomes the best movie. It becomes the best movie with some diversity. So keep that in mind. That will affect some of the movies today. So what we'll start off doing is talking about the nominated films. And I'm just doing this in alphabetical order. You can see the films right here, the ones that are nominated. I'll tell you about them. I'll give you a little bit of brief information, my personal opinion of these movies, and that will have nothing to do with the Academy's opinion of the movies. And then we'll do our predictions at the end of the show. We're going to be here several minutes, but it won't be too long, so enjoy it. Here we go. The first movie we're going to talk about is the movie Begonia. Now, this is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, and if you've not heard of him, don't worry, a lot of people haven't, but he's actually done some really interesting movies. A movie called Dogtooth back in 2009, a really odd movie called The Lobster back in 2015, which if you haven't seen, it's strange. It's out there. But one movie that I absolutely loved that he did was The Killing of the Sacred Deer back in 2017. And then he did Oscar-nominated films like The Favorite in 2018 and Poor Things. Now, he is the director on this movie. It was actually written by Will Tracy and somebody named Jang Jun Hwan. And you're going to say, well, that sounds like an odd name for an American film. That's because, obviously, he's not from America. He's a South Korean filmmaker. And it was in his 2003 film called Save the Green Planet that he wrote and directed is where they get the story for Begonia in this one. So a couple of things to note. The writers in this, like I said, Will Tracy and Jang Jun Hwan. It stars Emma Stone, who always seems to be around come Oscar time. Now, I like Emma Stone as an actress, but boy, she is getting A-list project after A-list project. And then there's the flavor of the month in Hollywood, or one of them at least, Jesse Plemons. Since he came on the scene in Friday Night Lights, he has done movie after movie, and they pick him for some movies they believe are going to be Oscar contenders. This one, no exception. And then we have the part of Don, played by Aidan Delbus. And what's really interesting about Aidan Delbus is he is actually known to be on the autism spectrum. But they wanted that kind of a personality in the movie. He really fits that role quite well. This particular movie had an original villain CEO in the South Korean version that was a man. The villain CEO, Michelle, is played by Emma Stone in this version. Will Tracy also has credits on a very popular show right now, The Succession, on streaming services. And then, of course, he wrote The Menu, which is another very strange but interesting film that came out a couple of years ago. Begonia Wants to Be Different. So basically, the movie is about two knuckleheads who seem to live together. They have had a relationship from their childhood that's marred by some sort of incidents. They don't completely go into detail. It involves a neighborhood cop who acts like their buddy and friend now, but you get the suspicion wasn't so much when they were kids. And Jesse Plemons' character obviously is the alpha in that situation, and he is just eaten up with conspiracy theories, one in particular involving a mothership that's currently docked near Earth, and that's going to cause all kinds of things to happen in a matter of days. We don't exactly know what that is. But because of a relationship, I won't get into all the details he has with the company that Michelle owns and is the CEO of, they hatch a plot to kidnap her. And part of the plot in kidnapping involves even shaving her head, which is kind of an interesting sidebar to this movie. And if you think that's the beginning and the end of the weird stuff, no, it just gets weirder from there and a lot more complicated. I love movies that really dig in and develop characters. This movie starts to dig in. I think they stopped short of fully developing some of these characters. But in the end, the bizarreness of Begonia just wasn't something that appealed to me. Now, I like a good weird movie just like everyone else. And sometimes movies are what we call eye candy for the movie viewer. There's just several scenes. They don't seem real cohesive, but they stick in your head and are very entertaining to watch. I thought this lacked that a little bit. I didn't see enough of it. And it gets so bizarre at the end with its grand finale that you kind of walk away from this movie just shaking your head wondering what you saw. Now, that'll appeal to some people, not so much for me. Now, when I review movies, I give grades. For Begonia, I'm giving it a C+. Now, C+ is a movie I might recommend, but not exactly the greatest movie in my book. Another movie that I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give away the spoiler here, F1, the movie with Brad Pitt. Came out not long ago, right in the pre-summer era where they were trying to hope it would catch the right time to be a hit, and it certainly made some money. It's F1 the movie, and again, it stars Brad Pitt as Sonny Hayes. It has Damson Idris in it as Joshua Pierce, and then Javier Bardem as Ruben. It's directed by Joseph Kosinski. You'll know him in just a minute. And then, of course, he's one of the writers along with Aaron Kruger. Joseph Kosinski, you'll remember, actually was the director on one of my favorite movies in the last decade, Top Gun Maverick. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the sequel to Top Gun in 1986, Top Gun Maverick, that came out in 23, is the superior movie. A lot of people will argue with me about that. But technical aspects alone, it was a great film, well acted. He did a super job with that, and you can bet he was going to take some of his energy into F1. It required over a year to negotiate the rights just to be able to say F1. And in this movie, each car carries an average of about 4 cameras on the car, so they could literally get this at a point of view type of experience and different angles of the cars. It's an immersive film by any stretch. Brad Pitt and Damson Idris, they do all their own driving in this with speeds up to 180 miles an hour. That's not your normal speed. No, I don't hit that on the interstate. So these are actors that are putting themselves in precarious positions, and it opened to 144 million worldwide. Originally, it was proposed as a sequel to a movie back in the 90s with Tom Cruise called Days of Thunder, and so far was worldwide Brad Pitt's highest grossing movie. You got to think about that a second. Worldwide, his highest grossing all-time movie. This movie is, like I said, very immersive. If you didn't get a chance to see it in the theater, you were missing something. I had the opportunity to go over to Florence, Kentucky, to see it in the XD Theater at Cinemark. I wished I had used the D-Box seats. If you're not familiar with those, there's certain seats in their XD theaters that actually rumble and move with what's going on in the screen. They cost about twice as much, so I don't always do that. I kind of wish I had in this movie, but even without that experience, you feel yourself moving and rumbling in the theater, as it is very immersive. Keep that word in mind. This is a movie that's going to use, however, every sports trope you've ever heard in any sports movie. It's going to use them. All the cliches, all the tropes. You start with Brad Pitt's character, Sonny Hayes. He's a veteran driver who had an incident when he was younger, right as he was getting to the pinnacle of his success, and it sort of diverted his career path. You've got the young driver, Joshua Pierce, who's right now making headway in Formula One and doesn't think he needs the help of the grizzled veteran, yet they're forced together on the same team with a very nervous money guy played by Javier Bardem, who always does everything he does very well, and he offers even some comic relief in this film. It's fast-paced, and while it does use all the tropes, sometimes films actually use those for a purpose. And I got the impression that Kaczynski liked those tropes and kind of leaned into them a little bit because he knows what audiences like and what is entertaining. And that's something we have to say for this film. It was very entertaining. This is not a great film, and this film will not win Best Picture. That one you can bet money on right now. The Oscars aren't until a week from Friday, March 15th, I believe. This will not win Best Picture. But it's a good film. I gave it a very solid B and had a lot of fun watching it. If you ever get the chance to see it in the theater, you might enjoy it. The next movie that is nominated for Best Picture was directed by one of my favorite directors, Guillermo del Toro, and it was Frankenstein. It was also written by Guillermo del Toro, along with, as they say in the credits, Mary Shelley. She died quite a few years ago. Didn't have much to do with the movie, but wrote the original novel, obviously. It stars Oscar Isaac playing Victor Frankenstein in a way we probably have never seen him before. Jacob Elordi plays the creature. We'll talk about him in just a moment, as he was nominated, and Oscar Isaac wasn't for acting roles. Christopher Waltz always comes in. It always seems like he's around come Oscar time. He played Harlander, and then there was Mia Goth, who I thought did a great job as Elizabeth. If you're not familiar with Guillermo del Toro, you're probably not much of a movie fan, but one of his greatest movies that he's famous for is Pan's Labyrinth. He had a lot to do with the Hobbit trilogy, a movie I really liked in the middle 2000s was Pacific Rim. If you haven't seen it, it's one to check out. And the Academy Award-winning The Shape of Water in 2017. Not one of my favorite movies, not even a movie I thought should be nominated, much less win for Best Picture, but that was Guillermo del Toro, and I think he commands a lot of respect in Hollywood. Jacob Elordi, playing the creature, spent up to 10 hours in the makeup chair every day for application, and he is the only actor, get this, the only actor ever nominated for playing Frankenstein's monster in the bazillion films that have been made about Frankenstein. This is the only one. They originally were going to cast Andrew Garfield. Frankly, I think they made the right choice here. I don't see that. Garfield had other commitments or probably would have had this role, and I can't envision that. The creature's design is based more off a graphic novel that came out later. And one thing of note, Del Toro wanted Oscar Isaac to be less scientist and more rock star. And that's kind of how he played the role a little bit. And actually, Mia Goth has two roles in it. She plays Lady Elizabeth Harlander, does that very well. And then there's Claire, who is Victor Frankenstein's mother. I thought Oscar Isaac nailed it. Exactly what his director wanted. The pacing of this movie is fantastic. The creepiness vibe of this movie. Some people ask me, do you really consider it a horror movie? Well, in its essence, it's a classic horror story, certainly. But mostly this is a movie of images, of dark and dreary palettes. And it's one that's just got a creepy vibe to it, a very dark film, very creepy film. It shows those parts of London that always seem very creepy, and it really knew how to play up to all of those things. And then Jacob Elordi, who actually does get nominated, gives a lot of depth to Frankenstein's monster, which is something Mary Shelley did in the novel. My son will point out it's not exactly like the Mary Shelley novel. All of the adaptations seem to change in certain parts. This one was no exception. But when you add the special effects and some of the imagery of this film, which I will never forget, it was a fantastic production. I saw it on Netflix. Would have loved to have seen this one in the theater, but it came out pretty immediately on Netflix. I think there was some worry as to whether they thought this film would get much of an audience. It has a great cast. It was very good watching the great cast in all of this. And for Frankenstein, I gave it an A-. Very high praise for Frankenstein. The next film I'm going to review that a lot of people probably heard about, but a lot of you, I assure you, didn't go and see. And that movie is called Hamnet. And I remember when I first heard about this movie and I knew that Shakespeare was kind of a part of this film, I kept thinking Shakespeare in Love. And if you saw that movie, it actually won Best Picture over a pretty good war movie that year, Saving Private Ryan, which stunned most people. Now, I liked Shakespeare in Love, thought it was very entertaining, and it was a solid movie. It wasn't Saving Private Ryan, but it was a good film. And I thought, if it's like that, I kind of get it. It adds a lot of humor to that time period. It gives you a story that's easy to follow. This film, however, was a lot darker than I expected. It was directed by Chloe Zhao. Now, Chloe Zhao has also one of the writing credits on this, along with Maggie O'Farrell. She directed Nomadland, which actually won an Academy Award in 2020, the movie Eternals in 21, and the writer in 2017. She is a young, up-and-coming director who's getting a lot of A projects. And so this one, she decided she was going to tell a story of Hamnet, who actually is the name of Shakespeare's son by the wife he has in this film. Shakespeare's played by Paul Mescal, and he did a great job in the Gladiator film, although I thought he was seriously miscast in that, but does a super job and does it right as Will Shakespeare. Rumor has it he actually got drunk for one of the scenes when Shakespeare was drunk, but he had good camaraderie with the rest of the cast. A lot of chemistry going on in this film. Emily Watson, a renowned British actress, plays Mary. And then Jessie Buckley, who was nominated for Best Actress, we'll talk about her later, did a phenomenal job. This film is based off a novel of the same name, so it is fictional. It was filmed entirely in sequence. And actually, Jacoby and Noah Jube are real-life brothers, and so that's kind of an interesting play in this film. Originally set to be directed by Sam Mendes, they were going to have Tom Holland play William Shakespeare, but I think Mescal pulls that off very well. When I say this movie was dark, it's the kind of soul-crushing movie at times that really has an emotional effect on you, and it's one of the few Oscar movies that I had an emotional reaction to. Now, I wasn't bawling in the theater, but it certainly hits hard. There's a lot of drama in this. If you probably know, I don't think I'm giving much away, Hamnet does not live to adulthood, and of course that causes a lot of the action and things that go on in the movie. It becomes a very deep character study, and Jessie Buckley is phenomenal. I'll say that again. She was phenomenal. At times, absolutely stealing scenes. It's a gut punch of a film, but a very well done. This is the kind of movie 10 years ago that would have been a shoo-in to win for Best Picture. I gave it a very solid A. The next film on my list, I was talking about this with our producer earlier, is the film Marty Supreme. This is directed by Josh Safdie, and he did a little movie called Uncut Gems that I think only appeared in streaming services with Adam Sandler. That was considered a diamond in the rough, not to give too much of a pun, but an excellent film. And he tries his luck at this particular film, Marty Supreme. It's starring one of the best young actors in Hollywood who just, again, keeps getting great roles. And this one, no exception, the role of Marty Mauser that went to Timothée Chalamet. It also stars in a very interesting role, Gwyneth Paltrow, who plays Kay Stone, a much older woman who has a little bit of a relationship with Timothée Chalamet, and Odessa Ozian, who plays Rachel Misler, his initial love interest in the film. They say Timothée Chalamet played at this film's basic sport. So this is kind of a sports movie, a sport that I happen to love, ping pong. And they say he trained when he was doing other films, like Dune in the past few years. And he actually took a table and it traveled with him as he went from one project to another. He would continue to work since 2018 to make a movie 5 years later on his ping pong. The film is loosely based on the life of a ping pong hustler. You didn't know those existed, did you? It was an entertainer by the name of Marty Reisman. Kevin O'Leary, George Gervin, Kemba Walker, Tracy McGrady, 3 of those from the NBA, and of course Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, all had cameos. Now the cameo by O'Leary, I'm going to go out on a limb here again. I thought he did a great job. He played himself, yeah, but they didn't just give him one line and say move on. He had kind of an integral part in the plot to this movie, and I thought he played it well. In a sense, sort of plays the heavy in the movie, the villain, but does it quite well, and he may get some other opportunities come up. The movie was shot entirely in 35 millimeter film, and it was tremendously acted. Once again, Timothée Chalamet is a very gifted actor. We see that. He plays a young man who is a hustler. All he does his whole life is hustle. He makes money playing ping pong. He's got a bad relationship at home. He does what he can to travel to these constant matches on the other side of the world, playing kind of he's got a contender who right now is at the top of the world, and he wants to play him and beat him, but he wants to make money. He wants to have everything that he wants, all the good stuff. And even Gwyneth Paltrow, who plays a veteran actress, not too far from who she is, who he sort of has a thing for, and she kind of has a thing for him. This is a movie that goes up and down quite a bit. One of the palettes they used in this movie, they borrowed from The Color of Money. If you remember the movie The Color of Money, how it kind of had a dark palette to it. Again, very neutral colors. This movie is very much like that. The wisecracking main character played by Chalamet is fun to watch when he's on screen. You never know what he's going to do next. But here is a criticism I have of movies like this that my wife has often shared with me, although this would not be a movie she would like. This movie will go into some of the language and other things that she probably wouldn't appreciate. But it's the kind of movie where you really don't have anybody you want to root for. You don't like any of the characters. And I'm not sure that's a better movie for it. Some people like that. Some people want to just see people implode. But for me, even when character arcs come full circle, I want to feel good about it. Anything good happening to this Marty Mauser character in the film, I didn't really want to happen because I didn't really care for him. I think you got to care for your protagonist just a bit, and this movie falls short of that. Because of it, I'm only giving this movie a B-, and I'm telling you right now, it is not for everybody. Don't come in with this high expectation of having a knee-slapper type of comedy. Don't come in with having this incredible idea of drama. It does mix some of those things in, but not quite to the level that you would want. This movie stays pretty even-keeled, and like I said, doesn't really give you anybody to root for. Now, Timothée Chalamet is the second youngest actor to be nominated 3 times for Academy Awards, only behind Marlon Brando. The next movie I'm going to do is one that a lot of people have heard about. If you want to talk about buzz around an Academy Award, this movie's got it. And the film is One Battle After Another, and it's directed by one of the best modern directors in cinema, and that's Paul Thomas Anderson. It was also written by Paul Thomas Anderson with help from Thomas Pynchon. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Bob. That's how we know him in the movie, as Bob. It stars Sean Penn in a very memorable role that we'll talk about later as Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw. You think they could have been a little more creative with the name, but you'll see what I mean if you see the film. It also stars one of my favorite actors, Benicio del Toro, as Sensei St. Carol's, and Benicio del Toro is just brilliant in most things. I love him as an actor, love seeing him in this. The Academy Award nominated Tiana Taylor, who plays Perfidia in the film, and Regina Hall. Chase Infinity, incidentally, didn't get any award nominations for this. She plays Willa as a 16-year-old daughter of Tom Cruise, integral to the part. She's actually 24 years old, but I think she nailed it. I thought she did a fantastic job and was very surprised no nominations came her way. If you're not familiar with Paul Thomas Anderson, what rock have you been living under? Most recently, he did Licorice Pizza, which is a brilliant film. If you haven't seen that, it came out in 2021. It's got some great young actors in it. He also did a movie that's sort of become a cinema classic, There Will Be Blood, from 2007. Another movie, if you haven't seen, you'll watch it. You'll probably only watch it once. You'll remember it as a pretty good movie, but that's about it. He also did a movie that really ushered in a different era in independent films, and that's the movie Magnolia with Tom Cruise back in 1999, and before that actually did Boogie Nights. This is a guy who has a long resume, and he really took his talents into this film. He claims it took over 20 years to pen this script, and basically it's about a guy who starts off as kind of a revolutionary, and they're more on the side of eco-terrorists, if you will. And he's with a group of them, and they run on the fringe of the law, and they have it organized almost like organized crime in such a way where they can elude capture for the most part, until his, at the time, girlfriend, who he actually gets pregnant in the film, ends up leaving and going on the run, and he leaves Bob to raise this daughter all by himself, and then his demons come back to haunt him. It seems like the authorities finally find where he is and where members of the group are, and they're going to exact some revenge. This movie digs into a lot of themes, not the least of which is racism. And Sean Penn plays this military colonel Lockjaw, who is everything you've heard about every Marine in the world. I thought a very wooden character at times. He definitely gets into his character roles. One of the criticisms of Sean Penn, which I'll share with you later too, is that Sean Penn sometimes overdoes it in his character roles. Now, one of the best things I've ever seen Sean Penn in is a film that came out in the 90s. If you haven't seen it, it is brilliant. Carlito's Way with Al Pacino. He played Al Pacino's lawyer in the film, did a phenomenal job. There he played sort of a character, kept it low-key, and was brilliant. And don't get me wrong, Sean Penn is a great actor. I just thought he overdid this part a little too much. And, of course, that's one of the bad guys with some racial tendencies who also had a little bit of a crush on the other nominated party in the film, and that's Tiana Taylor, who plays the mother who runs off. And obviously a lot of things are going to happen, as they always do. They're going to throw some things in here. The pacing of this movie is fantastic. Benicio del Toro comes in as the sensei who trains the daughter in martial arts. There's a lot of fighting and fleeing in this movie, and he pretty much is there for some comic relief and just straight man type of acting. Does a great job. You ask him to do anything, he understands the assignment. Leonardo DiCaprio. There's a guy I probably have nothing in common with politically, but I still look at him as one of the best American actors of our time, and he is. how can I possibly see Leonardo DiCaprio and not think about the performance he had in The Departed or in The Revenant? And it's time that he probably wins an Oscar. This is a very good film, top to bottom, very entertaining, at times hard to watch. At times, this one is knee-slapping, and you do have people to root for. A lot of great combinations. I thought Paul Thomas Anderson did a super job in its direction, in its pacing, in its cinematography, the camera work in this film. My only letdown, and it's just a little bit, was I thought Sean Penn could have done this a little differently. But what do I know? Sean Penn ends up getting nominated. So one battle after another on our grade scale, we gave Marty Supreme a B-. One battle after another gets an A. Excellent film. We're not quite done. I said you've got several movies. We're only a little over halfway on the reviews. The next one we're going to talk about is the last film I saw. And the reason it's the last film I saw is because I couldn't find it playing anywhere. I really wanted to see it in the theater. Finally, it came on Hulu. I'm a Hulu subscriber, so I was able to watch it on Hulu this past week, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. And that movie is The Secret Agent. Now, it's one of two movies we have nominated that uses subtitles, this one all the way through, the other movie for only part of it. It was written and directed by Kleber Mendonça Filho. Kleber Mendonça Filho. Excuse me, and it stars a very popular Brazilian actor by the name of Wagner Moura. You may hear more about him as he was also nominated for Best Actor. It also stars and he plays Armando Solomores in this film, who's the protagonist of the film. And then Robson Andrade plays Clovis and Ruben Santos in this film. So basically the gist, it's 1977 in Brazil. Brazil's a very war-torn area with a fascist regime trying to take over. A technology expert in Brazil who teaches at a university flees from some kind of a mysterious past that we only learn a little bit about as the movie goes on, and returns to his hometown of Recife in search of peace. He ends up living with a bunch of refugees. He soon realizes that the city is far from being the refuge that he seeks. Wagner Moura won at the Cannes Film Festival and was the first male actor from Brazil to win the acting prize, and that's the big one. This is the highest-grossing Brazilian release of 2025. That's no surprise. It got a 13-minute standing ovation at Cannes, which, if you know, that's kind of how you judge films at Cannes, not by who wins all the great awards necessarily, but who gets the longest ovations at the end of the film. So there's a thing when people see movies at Cannes, they will stand up and applaud as long as they think it. Can you imagine standing for 13 minutes clapping? And that's what they did when they saw this movie. Now, as for the movie, this once again is a very odd movie. It's got a lot of symbolism in that there were people that were disappearing at the time in Brazil. There's a whole subplot in this film that involves the movie Jaws, a severed leg found inside a shark. It doesn't really have a lot to do with the rest of the movie, which I found odd but intriguing. There's even one sequence where the severed leg, for no apparent reason, comes to life and starts attacking people by kicking them at a park where several homosexual people are around. I don't know what the message in that was, but what was happening in Brazil is several of the newspapers were so cautious of getting in trouble with the fascist in charge that they made up a character they called the Hairy Leg in 1977. And the Hairy Leg did all kinds of things, committed all types of crimes. They would never implicate any person because chances are that person would go missing. And one of the very odd things about this movie as it goes on, you can see the authorities getting close to Wagner. You realize he ran afoul of certain politicians because they were pulling money and funding from his projects, including one that sort of plays the heavy in the film. There are a lot of heavies in this film, and a lot of them are on the side of the police. He runs into a police captain who travels with one son and one half-son who are kind of his henchmen. While they're kind of following the script with this severed leg thing, they're sort of backdrop characters in the real story. It's hard to know. They mix it up with the main character at different points in the film. But this movie's really trying to say people disappeared at that time. And in the final conclusion of the film, we actually go to modern day, where we see a group of college students studying tapes that were made about the characters that are in the film and coming to some of their own conclusions about the way things mysteriously disappear, and that's really the overriding theme. There's a lot of good stuff in this film. It also is a lot of strange stuff, and for me, again, you're asking a whole lot of an audience to put up with that. You're taking some big swings as a director. I always appreciate that, but you also came up with some misses in this. Wagner is a tremendous actor, has a lot of charisma, and that's what he's known for in Brazil, sort of stealing the spotlight as he's in films. He's worth watching this film and watching him interact with some of the other characters, and some of these characters are fantastic, well-crafted, well-developed characters. There's a lot of good things about this movie, but it's not got a chance to win an Academy Award for Best Picture. It is nominated in the foreign language category. I don't think it will win that either, but it'll have a chance. It's actually one of the front runners in that category. It is not in this one. I gave this one a B. A good movie, not a great movie. The next film we're going to review is one called Sentimental Value, and Sentimental Value was directed by Joachim Trier. It was written by Estelle Vogt and Joachim Trier, and it stars Renate Reinsve. I'm probably going to mess these names up. She plays Nora Borg in the film. One of my favorite actors, Stellan Skarsgård, who you'll be familiar from a lot of the Marvel films, but so many other movies that he's done stateside. He's just a tremendous actor. And it also stars Inga Ibsdottir Lillios. And I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. I'm not real sure. She plays Agnes Borg Pedersen. And then finally, one I could pronounce, Elle Fanning as Rachel Kemp. Joachim Trier directed The Worst Person in the World, which also starred Renate Reinsve. That was a fantastic movie, well received by critics. And then he also did a movie about a mass shooting in Oslo called Oslo August 31. That was back in 2011. He wrote this with Renate in mind, and both of the hard-to-pronounce Swiss characters, both of them end up getting nominations, one for Best Supporting Actor, one for Best Actress. Remember what I told you about Cannes and the ovations? This one received a 19-minute ovation. Stellan Skarsgård plays Gustav Borg, who is a filmmaker and is kind of making his autobiographical film. He's been a very successful filmmaker, and he really writes this for his estranged daughter. Their mother is no longer in the picture, having passed away, and it's the funeral that brings him back into his daughter's lives. They're two sisters. The older daughter, played by Renata, she is an actress, mostly in plays. The younger daughter is married and has children and is leading more of kind of a home life, and both do an outstanding job. The level of development in these characters is outstanding. Elle Fanning plays an American actress who ends up being cast in the role that he wanted for his daughter, and that causes some conflict at times, but also causes her some self-realization as we see a very interesting character arc where she's concerned. This movie is about 90%, I'd say 85, 90%, you'll have to read subtitles. There's about 10% in English, and it doesn't really take anything away from this film. I still liked it. I still followed along on the journey. It is so aptly titled, Sentimental Value, why we hold on to the things we do. A lot of it centers around the house they all grew up in, that the girls live in now, and how those relationships and those dynamics change. It's one of those movies that's almost underwritten. It lets the story and the feel of the story kind of take the lead, and I really like that. Script writers in Hollywood these days tend to overwrite movies and overwrite characters. This time they let the actors really get into it, and this is one of Stellan Skarsgård's best performances because it's subtle. Because it's so subtle, he manages to make it even more powerful. It really is a great film, very worthy of its nomination. I give it a solid A as well. We're down to the final two movies. The first one that we're going to talk about is Sinners. That's written and directed by one of the great up-and-coming directors in Ryan Coogler. It stars Michael B. Jordan playing both Smoke and Stack in the film, the two brothers who were part of the Chicago mafia gangs from Al Capone and come back to their hometown in Mississippi to start a juke joint up in a single day. And most of the movie follows about a 24-hour period. It also stars Jack O'Connell, who has a very fascinating role in this, Haley Steinfeld, Sammy Moore, and playing Sammy Moore, and Delroy Lindo, one of my favorite actors who ended up getting a nomination for his role as Delta Slim, and Wunmi Mosaku, who plays Annie and also got a Best Supporting nod. Ryan Coogler, you should know by now, directed one of my favorite Marvel movies. This may surprise some people. It was Black Panther. That's where he first got in with Michael B. Jordan, who plays the villain in Black Panther. Black Panther was a great movie. Excellent characters, excellent pacing. Everything that you want to see in a movie was included in Black Panther. Very entertaining, and two outstanding performances by the leads. It was a star-studded cast, and he really showed his chops in that film, and I think people realized this is a guy that's going to stay. If they didn't then, they would have in his 2015 movie. He started the whole Creed franchise, capitalizing off the Rocky franchise, also with Michael B. Jordan. He also was the director on Judas and the Black Messiah, which has quietly earned a lot of praise since it came out in 2021. And then a great movie that got Michael B. Jordan an Academy Award nomination in 2013, which if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend, Fruitvale Station. It's a very simple but powerful story that Michael B. Jordan carries. Another actor left over from Friday Night Lights. He has really made his name in Hollywood and is truly one of the best A-list actors we know. Christopher Nolan actually helped shoot this film so they could get it in 65 millimeter. And Christopher Nolan's big. When he makes a movie, he wants you to see it in the theater. That's one of his biggest things. He insists on you seeing it in the theater. And this is the kind of movie, if you didn't see it in the theater, you really missed out on something. This might have been the most fun I've had at a movie at years, the most entertained I've been at a movie in years. It was absolutely breathtaking at times and fantastic. Many of the musical performances, and keep in mind, music is a huge part of this film, but many of those performances were actually recorded with the cast members on set with some periodic blues band type of folks in there, but the cast members did a lot of their own performing in this film. It was released back in April, and the reason that's significant is movies that get released in April aren't always Oscar contenders. They're movies that usually the studios not real sure about. They're not sure how it's going to be taken. And so they released it in April, a little bit early for Academy Awards, and it ended up getting nominated for 16 Academy Awards, the most in history. So this is well loved so far by the Academy. This is a movie that could have stood on its own as a gangster film about two brothers coming back from Chicago and starting a juke joint. It could have very readily stood on its own. But instead of that, it decides it's going to be something a little bit more, and this is when some of the craziness comes in. By the way, the second highest grossing original horror film domestically after The Sixth Sense. Miles Catan is a brand new actor, and he plays sort of the musician who is a preacher's kid who gets entranced by the two brothers, the identical twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, played brilliantly by Michael B. Jordan with very unique personalities, color palettes, one blue, one red, very unique personalities, and that affects the end of the movie. And apparently, according to a prologue in the film, there's a quote that says, "There are legends of people born with the gift of making music so true, it can pierce the veil between life and death, conjuring spirits from the past and the future." And this movie ends up conjuring some spirits towards the music, and that is in the form of vampires. Yeah, I said it. All of a sudden, this movie takes a twist. And one of the movies that inspired this film was From Dusk to Dawn. If anybody's seen that, that's really two movies. It's a caper escape movie that becomes a vampire movie. This is a gangster movie that becomes a vampire movie, but in this case is all the better for it. It works so well. They meld it into this plot so perfectly that it's just seamless. You don't seem to mind as the movie takes its supernatural grift and all the stories that are done within that. It is a fantastic movie. Tremendous pacing. And again, it's classified as a horror movie, and this one definitely has. You're going to have some jump scares and you're going to have some things like that. But again, nothing that takes away from the sheer brilliance, and I credit Ryan Coogler with a lot of that brilliance. He completely outdoes himself. One thing we'll talk about in a little bit, we talk about swings that directors will take, big swings. Let me tell you, the man took some big swings in this film, and I think it paid off. The last movie we're going to talk about, directed by Clint Bentley, who also directed Jockey and wrote the movie Sing Sing, is a movie I think everybody's forgotten about, and that's a movie called Train Dreams. Train Dreams I saw several months ago. Again, this is one that I streamed, wasn't able to see it in the theater. The cinematography, by the way, is gorgeous in this film. And it's sort of a turn-of-the-century film about the inception of starting the rail system in the United States and building the railroads. And its main character, Robert Grainer, played brilliantly by Joel Edgerton, sets off to work the railroads, but tries to find a family and build a home for his family, but he always has to leave for months at a time to go do his railway type of work. It also stars Clifton Collins and Felicity Jones, who does an outstanding job as the spouse. This movie is another gut punch kind of movie at the end. And once again, this is the type of movie, probably more in the neighborhood of 20 years ago, that the Academy would have absolutely loved. It would have been a movie that very well could have made Best Picture or could have gotten Best Picture in those days. It very much deserves its nomination. I don't really think it's going to get serious consideration for the award. And it's a shame because this is another A movie. It's a solid A. I really like this movie. They shot it digitally. They didn't really want to do that, but they had a 29-day schedule. It's based off a novella by Dennis Johnson. You're going to see a William Macy appearance in this movie that does pretty well, and an ending that, again, is just a gut punch, but is handled so well. And with such class and the character development, unbelievable in the film. Again, a very solid A. So my first gut reaction to the movies that were nominated this year before we go to our board to kind of wrap this up, my first gut reaction is that this was a pretty solid set of nominees. Now, there are going to be a lot of people that argue with me about Begonia being the lowest rated movies out of the ones I did, and there are going to be people that really loved it. I just didn't. It's just not my type of movie. I don't mind movie makers getting creative. I don't mind them going in their own directions, trying to make a movie we haven't seen before, but you've got to ground it somewhere. I just didn't feel like this movie did it enough. I thought, though, it was very well acted. Again, Emma Stone, phenomenal. Everybody, I think, in the acting categories, you're going to find out, really deserve their nomination. We'll talk a little bit about Sean Penn. But everybody pretty much deserves the nomination. But you could tell movies I was more excited about, so I'm sort of giving the last part away. But that's where we're going to come to right now. And this is both who I think will win the Academy Award, who the Academy will pick, and who will actually win it. Now, what's interesting is they've gone to a ranking system for the Oscars. So you don't just pick the best film, you rank the 9 films. And that's true in every category. It makes it a little more interesting. Also, what tends to happen is for Best Picture, the movie makers, the producers, people like that, they tend to vote for Best Picture. Actors vote for actors, that type of thing. Sound design, artists vote for sound design. Film editors vote for film editing. And I don't get into a lot of the ancillary categories, although there's some real interesting ones. There's a new one this year, Best Casting in a Film. A lot of people think Sinners has a good shot at that. Special effects, the Avatar film that came out probably's got the lead way in that. And I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't see the Avatar film, as many films as I've seen this year. I think I'm about done with Avatar. I don't think they could do a whole lot more that I haven't seen and retread the same plot that basically is Dances with Wolves over and over again. We get it. This is an honor to the Native American. We understand. Stop hitting us over the head with it, James Cameron. Anyway, so now we're going to get on and we're going to decide what movies Scott picks and what movies Oscar picks. So I've spared no expense in what we've been able to give you today, and we're going to start off right in the center of the board with actress in a supporting role. Now let's go over the nominees real quick. For actress in a supporting role, there was Elle Fanning for Sentimental Value. She played Rachel Kemp. There was, and I continue to mess her name up, Inga Ibsdottir Lilios, and she also was in Sentimental Value playing Agnes Borg Pedersen, who is one of the sisters. I'm going to tell you right there, that's a bad sign for the Academy when you have two actresses from the same movie in one category. A lot of times that splits votes. That's what's happened in the past. Then you have Amy Madigan, and this is a movie we haven't talked about, Weapons, which absolutely was a very entertaining movie, and she was great in it. We have, she played Aunt Gladys. For people who haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. Then we have Wunmi Mosaku from Sinners, who played Annie, and she also did a brilliant job in the movie. And then finally, Tiana Taylor, One Battle After Another. And again, all of the actors that we're going to talk about in any of these categories, they truly did a good enough job to get the nods. There are some actors out there in some films I would have liked to have seen get them, but I have no problem with any of the nominees. Here is what we think. First of all, for actress in a supporting role, the Oscar will go to Tiana Taylor in One Battle After Another. And the reason the Oscar will go to Tiana Taylor is twofold. She's getting a lot of the buzz. That's always important. She's a young and up-and-coming actress. She really checks a lot of the diversity boxes. She plays a role that is multi-layered. She does a good job. I, however, did not think she was the best nominee in the category, but I fully believe she is the one that will win the Oscar. Once again, that's Tiana Taylor. The one who I would give the Oscar to from the movie Weapons, I'm going to have to give it to Amy Madigan. I have seen Amy Madigan in movies for a long, long time. A lot of people forget she was in Field of Dreams. I have seen her in a ton of movies. This was one of the most unique characters she has ever played. I had no idea going into the movie she was in the film, and then when she made her appearance, I knew very little about Weapons going in, which that's the way you got to go in to see Weapons. Know as little as possible, which is hard now. And she blew me away in that film. She was so against type in that film for what she normally plays and did it so well and so convincingly. You just have to see her performance in this 100%. It would not surprise me if the Academy recognizes her. She's a well-respected actress. Doesn't check enough of the boxes, in my opinion, but we'll see. Maybe the Academy's coming off the diversity thing a little bit. I don't know yet. We will see. But that is who I think should win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. On to the Best Actor in a Supporting Role. And the nominees, one of my all-time favorite actors, Benicio del Toro, for One Battle After Another playing the sensei. Jacob Elordi in Frankenstein playing the creature. Delroy Lindo playing Delta Slim in Sinners. And then it's Sean Penn in One Battle After Another as Colonel Stephen Lockjaw. And finally, Stellan Skarsgård in Sentimental Value. Once again, a very tough category. I love Benicio del Toro, but I still think he and Sean Penn will split votes. And that's one of the reasons a lot of the buzz right now is Sean Penn. If you look at the gambling sites, not that I do that, but if you check them out, Sean Penn's getting a lot of the favoritism right now, but I still think it splits votes. And I think there are a lot of people that agree with me. I think he overdid it in that role a little bit. And I just can't in good conscience think that the Academy is going to pick him, although, like I said, any more with the Academy, it would not surprise me. They love having Sean Penn come up and accept an award and give a little political speech. That said, I think actually the Oscar will go to. This is my surprise pick overall, Jacob Elordi in Frankenstein. These are probably hard for you guys to see. I apologize for that. I'll make sure I tell you. But Jacob Elordi, there is no doubt he did a great job. He had to endure quite a bit to play this role, gave it a lot of feeling and a lot of heart, made it an even better film. Just did a fantastic job, and I think if the Academy picks him, which I believe they will in a little bit of an upset, then I think that's a good choice. It's not the choice I would have made, I'll tell you right now. It is not the choice I would have made, but I really liked him in this, and the only reason I didn't like him is because the one I picked, I'm just a big fan, and that probably affects my choice. But for Scott, the actor in a supporting role will go to Delroy Lindo for Sinners. Now, before you jump and say he didn't have the biggest role in Sinners, I'm going to argue that every scene he was in, he about stole, and that's with some pretty solid actors around him. Delroy Lindo's been around a long time. I think I first really noticed him in the movie Get Shorty back in the 90s with John Travolta. And again, he was so fantastic in that. I have been a big fan of Delroy Lindo for so long. This role just seems like it was completely made for him. It allows him to be the musician that he loves to be. He does a great job with that part of it. He plays kind of one of the most solid, stoic characters in the film. Despite the fact that alcohol ruined the character's life through most of it, he has some big scenes towards the end. He is one of my favorite actors, and this is my show, not yours. I'm picking Delroy Lindo out of the rest of him. I absolutely love him as an actor, and I thought he did a fantastic job in a fantastic movie. All right. So those are kind of the soft ones. Now we're getting into the good stuff. Okay, we're getting into the good stuff. So we're going to do Best Actress first. And the nominees for Best Actress were Jessie Buckley from Hamnet, playing Agnes, the wife of William Shakespeare, the mother of Hamnet. We're going to have Rose Byrne. This is a movie I saw a few months ago. It was called If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. She played Linda, the protagonist of the film, who's a mother dealing with a daughter who has all kinds of medical issues. If you ever watch this film, it's a hard one to watch at times. It's done with almost all close-up shots. I have never seen a movie like this. The cinematography is very interesting in this film. I'm not sure I liked it. It's a very unsettling way to watch a movie, but I think that was part of the design, so you would feel the stress she did. Rose Byrne nailed it. This category is one of the best categories in the Oscars because every one of these actresses did a tremendous job. Rose Byrne was absolutely fantastic. The next one up, and I saw this movie within the last couple of weeks, from Song Sung Blue, it's Kate Hudson playing Claire. Kate Hudson wraps herself up in the role of this Milwaukee young woman who meets Neil Diamond impersonator and performs with him. It's a crazy plot. Hugh Jackman does a fantastic job in it as well, but she really does a great job. She faces some adversity in the film. I won't give it away, and that really gets her going. She shows her acting chops. I have loved Kate Hudson ever since I saw her in one of my favorite movies, Almost Famous, where she was tremendous. You talk about a scene stealer. She's still doing it. She just has that magnetic charm that you're really drawn to her. She even kind of plays this role a little frumpy, a little blue collar, and does a tremendous job. She just seems like a very personable actress, does a great job. I was glad she got nominated. And then, of course, there is Renate Reinsve from Sentimental Value playing Nora Borg. This was her meatiest role that she had. The role was written for her. She really dove into it, really portrayed the emotion and the understated emotion, acting aside with Stellan Skarsgård, and they had some great scenes together. Loved her performance in this. I really did. This is a movie with so many good performances, and this really was one. You have very distinct characters who stay in your mind a long time, of which she is one. A lot of people think she can sneak in and win for Best Actress this year, and that is a possibility. And the final nominee was Emma Stone for Begonia, playing CEO Michelle, who gets kidnapped, has to shave her head. I mean, the woman shaved her head for the role. And she does a great job. Emma Stone's a great actress. Again, she just has that kind of charisma which draws you to her. She's not even classically the most beautiful actress out there, but she's such a good actress, is such an intelligent actress. She has a lot of charisma. That's why she gets the A-list roles. She does not disappoint. I think the material could have been better, but she was great in it. So, without further ado, we're going to do our actress in a leading role. And the Oscar will go to we got something messed up here. Hold on, let me see here. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning when I was doing this, so I think I have my actress and actor. There we go. There you go. The actress. My sons right now will be watching this and making fun of me. The actress is Jessie Buckley, who will win the Oscar for Hamnet. She, far and away, was probably the winner. She's leading in all the betting categories, and there's a reason why. If you see this film, if you know, you know. She does a fantastic job. That will be a worthy Oscar, and I think Oscar gets it right because that's also what Scott picked. That's one time I completely agree with the Academy Awards, and I think this is a no-brainer. I think this definitely will happen. This is one prediction I would bet money on, and she absolutely deserves it. So congratulations early for her, because I think this one I would be willing to mortgage the house on. So I got my actor and my actresses mixed up, and I may have given a little bit away, but we're going to move on to the Best Actor Award, another interesting one with a lot of great choices in it. Starting with Timothée Chalamet from Marty Supreme playing Marty Mauser. He understood the assignment. Timothée Chalamet plays the fast-talking ping-pong hustler as well as it can be played. I have nothing bad to say about Timothée Chalamet. He is a great modern actor. I'm looking forward to see what he does in the next Dune film and so many other films that he's being talked about for. It's just exciting what his career is going to become. And there's the guy who gets nominated all the time. How about Leonardo DiCaprio for One Battle After Another as Bob? DiCaprio, again, great American actor. He understood the assignment. He goes a little against type, just a little bit, not so much the tough guy in this one, but just a fantastic role, very humorous. I think he plays the comedy of this role perfectly, and that's why he earned his nomination quite well. Then there is Ethan Hawke in a little movie called Blue Moon. Saw this a few weeks ago. Ethan Hawke, again, one of the great American actors, has done so many films, from Dead Poets Society to some of the things that he's done recently. Terrence Malick, who is just a bizarre but great movie maker, loves using Ethan Hawke in films. He was in a movie called Blue Moon that basically where he plays a real-life person, Lorenz Hart, who before Gilbert and Sullivan were Gilbert and Sullivan, they were Gilbert and Hart, and then they split up, and Gilbert goes on to make Oklahoma, the first Gilbert and Sullivan production, and this movie takes place in a hotel bar as the premiere of Oklahoma is hitting that evening, and it goes through what Ethan Hawke's character goes through, the loves, the life, the history, what's happening to him, the roller coaster of emotions. Ethan Hawke does a fantastic job with that. Hollywood loves this guy. That's a fantastic performance. The next one, again, one of my personal favorites. You got Michael B. Jordan for Sinners playing both Smoke and Stack. That alone got him the Oscar nomination. The fact that he made them two distinctive characters got him the Oscar nomination. The fact that he does quiet intensity and rage so well, but also does soft and human so well. It's like he's got this intense face, but these soft eyes. He really, when you talk about the kind of guy that everybody looks at when he walks in a room, he commands attention in every film. He had one of the best performances of the year when he did the Black Panther. I'm shocked he didn't win an Academy Award for that. This one certainly well-deserving and one of the best movies of the year. And then the final was Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent, Armando Salimos. He was a great character. He is a great Brazilian actor. Again, all these people have this in common, a lot of charisma. He's not going to win this either. He's a good actor, had a great performance. I'm glad he got nominated. He's not going to win this. So, the best actor for the Oscar. They're going to give it to Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon. I told you Hollywood loves this guy. They want to see him up there accepting an award. He has deserved it for many more movies that he hasn't gotten. I would not be upset with this choice at all. I really liked his performance in this. A lot of people feel like this would be a little bit of a surprise, but I think he is one of the front runners in this. A lot of people think Leonardo DiCaprio may walk away with it this time for One Battle After Another. I don't think so. I think the early betting, by the way, has Timothée Chalamet in the lead. I just don't see that happening. I think Ethan Hawke gets this, knowing the way they think. This one I'm going out on a limb a little bit. I think it's going to be Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon. By the way, a very good movie. Again, Bobby Cannavale's in that, fantastic too. So check this movie out. It really is good. Now, if I'm picking, I'm going with, there's my man, Michael B. Jordan for Sinners. He just did everything in that movie, and a movie that was so intense and so well done and so well acted. He absolutely deserves the Academy Award. Don't get me wrong, he's going to have a chance. I'm rooting for him all the way. I still think it's going to be Ethan Hawke, but he needs to be up there accepting an award because he was the central part of that movie and he put everything he had into it. The final two categories coming up. The first one is director. Back in the day, this used to go hand in hand with Best Picture. And most of the time it still does, although in the past 10 years, I don't think it's done it as much. Now we're starting to see them split that. There was a time period around the late 80s, early 90s where you could almost set your watch to the fact the Academy Awards were going to pick the same movie for director as for Best Picture. It doesn't always happen here, and I'm trying to reflect that. Now, here's what I think will happen. A lot of people favor this first nominee, Paul Thomas Anderson, for One Battle After Another. And you could certainly give it to him. I wouldn't be disappointed. Then there's Ryan Coogler, we've talked about with Sinners. Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme. Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value. And again, I just thought it was the understated stuff in that made him so good. And then we have another female director, and there haven't been a lot of them to win. There have been, but not a lot. And that's Chloe Zhao for Hamnet. Hamnet's a great movie. This is the dark horse in this category, Chloe Zhao. She could sneak in and win this thing for director. But who I think the Oscars will pick, I think they're going to go with Ryan Coogler, and there's a reason for that. He just does an exceptional job. And when I say the guy took swings, big swings, that if he missed could have ruined this movie, he didn't, and it ended up being successful. One scene I'll never forget in this film is while they're all dancing in this juke joint, and they've got everybody there, and all of a sudden it sort of pans across the juke joint, and you start to see people come in from various times in history doing different cultural type of dances. That's a really big swing to take in a film. It kind of goes in a different direction, but let me tell you, it works. And the music, by the way, is phenomenal in Sinners. It's a big part of the movie, a huge part of the movie, so you can't separate it from the movie. And I think Coogler knew that. And this really is his penultimate film. He finally has his masterpiece and deserves it. And you can probably guess that I'm going with Ryan Coogler for Sinners. I made this a little more difficult than I thought. So Ryan Coogler is going to sweep it for me in the Oscars. I think Oscar gets this right. The one that won't surprise me is Paul Thomas Anderson, the dark horse, Chloe Zhao. But I think this is going to be Ryan Coogler's success story. And now we come to Best Picture, and I toiled with this. I was pretty set on what I had as Best Picture. People that are my friends and my family know probably what I have picked on it, but I really toiled with what the Oscars would do. And I felt like they would give Ryan Coogler, the director, they had to give him one of the two, but I didn't think they were going to give him both of them. I felt like they were going to go in a different direction, and the same movie that swept a lot of the outside awards, Critics' Choice, that type of thing, Golden Globes, is the movie I think is going to win for Best Picture. Now, a couple of guys that I respect that know movies feel like it's going to be a Sinners sweep. I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson gets his recognition, and he gets the Oscar for Best Picture. I'm not positive on this one. I said I toiled quite a bit, but I really feel like they're going to – that's the politics of Hollywood in play. Maybe not the best movie, but they've got to award him something, right? Now, maybe they'll give him the Best Director. If that happens, if they announce Best Director, which they always do those two awards last, if they announce Best Director and it's Paul Thomas Anderson, then I think it's going to be the opposite, and Sinners will have a good chance to get the Oscar. Either way, if it comes down to the best movie of the year, it will be Sinners. I saw this movie when it came out, probably the first week, in an IMAX theater, Cinemark XD, so it's kind of their version of IMAX in the digital cinema. The way the movie draws you in, especially, again, I can't say this enough, in the theater, it was the best time I've had at a movie in a very long time. And a movie that can do that to you is worthy of the praise that it gets. This is an absolute masterpiece. It was an A+ from the time I saw it. My movie-going buddy, Mike Rowe, who's out there, Mike and I saw it, and I looked at him and said, that movie's going to get nominated and win an Academy Award. I hope it does. I'm rooting for it all the way because it is that good, and this is one of those years that a very diverse movie is also the best movie. It doesn't always happen, and I think Hollywood's lesser for it, the way they've decided these things, but it needs to get this right because that is the best movie of the year, hands down. One Battle After Another, great movie. I'd recommend it to anybody. Almost all of these movies, to some degree, I would, but I think they are a distant second place to what Sinners is and the kind of feeling I had watching that film and the fact that Michael B. Jordan is such a great actor. That's going to be the best movie of the year in my book. The Oscars probably won't get that right. So that's my opinion. You're going to check out the Academy Awards if you want to, or you can do what most people do and skip them and just kind of follow it on the phone, because that is one of the worst shows on television. I would almost rather see them just do the awards one right after the other. I can't stand watching it. I can't stand all the virtue signaling and the politics. Just get to the movies, get to the stuff I like, and let's watch it. And then there's 18 musical numbers I couldn't care less about. But if you want to watch it, you will. See if I'm right. If you want to try to email in and tell us what we got wrong, I'm happy to hear your opinions. If you want more of this, let us know. But once again, I want to thank you for giving me your time tonight. This has been Scott Borders. I'm going to say so long from the TBNK studios, and good night.